behind every great man is a great woman.
We've all heard that expression. There have been countless jokes and parodies based on it. From the meddling mother and nagging wife jokes to the alteration, behind every great man is a woman rolling her eyes.
Jokes aside, it's the idea that men who achieve greatness have a smart, driven, determined woman behind the scenes playing a pivotal role in their success.
Great men have stories of their companions who sometimes rise to greater heights of popularity than they do.
Like Eva Perón. She was a first lady more beloved and popular than her husband, Argentinian President Juan Perón.
Humankind as a whole tends to look back on the accomplishments and events of history and attribute them to individuals, specifically men. When we look back on World War II, for instance, Roosevelt, Churchill, Stalin, and Hitler are the shorthand way to tell the whole complicated story.
This tendency was popularized by the 19th century Scottish writer Thomas Carlyle, who dubbed it the great man theory. History is simply the collective actions of great men whose extraordinary talents, intelligence, and popularity forged the events of their time.
This idea that a man becomes great on his own, in a vacuum, means that the people who are behind the great man are ignored, overshadowed by his reputation, and defined solely as his wife, mother, sister, or daughter.
Found Women is a series that puts the great women behind great men front and center. These unseen, unheard, unknown women are the protagonists of our stories.
The stories go back as far as 1353 BC to Nefertiti, the wife of the pharaoh Akhenaten, who was instrumental in a religious revolution in Egypt that introduced the worship of a single god. She also was depicted fighting in battle, putting her on par with her husband.
Speaking of religious revolution, there's the great woman behind the man who launched the Reformation and with it, all Protestant religion, Martin Luther. Katharina von Bora ran away from her life as a nun to marry Luther, which revolutionized the institution of marriage in ways that continue today.
Well, then she would like Desmond Tutu's daughter, Mpo Tutu, who married her female partner, Marceline van Furt. Mpo gave up her rights as a priest because of its stance against same-sex marriage. And her father supports his daughter, who now runs the Tutu Foundation. Desmond said, "I would refuse to go to a homophobic heaven. No, I would much rather go to the other place."
And there's Abigail Adams, wife of our country's second president and mother to our sixth. Abigail was an early advocate of women's rights and the abolition of slavery, and greatly influenced the policies of her husband, John Adams.
And speaking of mothers, if you thought Alexander the Great was great, you should meet his mother. Not many people can claim to have conquered the known world, but Alexander did. He had one person, however, who he answered to, his mom. She was a snake worshiper, and it's said she slept with serpents. While Alexander was out conquering the world, Olympias ruled the kingdom and was the most powerful woman in the world.
There's also the stories of the sisters behind these men, like Fatima Jinnah. Her brother Muhammad Ali Jinnah founded Pakistan. Fatima fought along beside him in the independence movement. Pakistanis call her the mother of the nations. And there are the women behind famous men in the arts.
Like Zelda Fitzgerald, F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife. Her extensive diaries provided much of the material for his novels like The Great Gatsby and This Side of Paradise. And Sophia Tolstoy, who edited her husband's War and Peace manuscript 7 times to make it publishable.
And Hitchcock's wife, who was also his editor, advisor, confidant, and script rewriter. She talked Hitchcock into including the iconic soundtrack of the Psycho shower scene.
Lots of great women.
Lots of stories to be told.
And it's time that we hear them.
Join us as we shed light on the women in the shadows of famous men.
All these books, hundreds of them, are about the founder of the Lutheran Church, Martin Luther. His theology, doctrine, politics, his life. It's hard to fathom. A man who begins his life in the early 1500s as a simple, pious monk in an Augustinian monastery, ends up a married priest, leading the Reformation and founding a new religion, Lutheranism. What is not well known are Luther's objections to the Church's teachings on marriage, sex, and celibacy. Luther came to believe and preach that marriage should be an equal partnership between a man and a woman. How did he come to this belief? Through his own marriage. Luther's wedlock legitimized the radical idea that marriage could be as holy as celibacy. So, who was this woman whom Luther married? Her name was Katharina von Bora. And while only 8 of her letters survived, we know through Luther's writings and those of his contemporaries what a profound impact Katharina had on him, on the institution of marriage, and indeed the entire Protestant movement. Behind every great man is a great woman. Katharina von Bora was the great woman behind the great reformer. Let's watch now as Katharina steps out from her husband's shadow and describes in her own words who she was and the partnership she forged with Martin Luther.